Live from Waterford and Dungarvan, this is Waterford at 1 News.
Good afternoon, I'm Sinead O'Hare. In today's top stories, there's just one confirmed case of COVID-19 at University Hospital Waterford. The Taoiseach says he's more confident now that the country can begin to reopen from next week. A lecturer at WIT's worry that Waterford in the South East region will be left behind as the economy emerges from the pandemic. And in sport, former Manchester United defender Gary Neville doesn't think it's a certainty the Premier League will return next month. There was just one confirmed case of COVID-19 at University Hospital Waterford last night. That's according to the HSE's daily operations update. There were further 3 patients awaiting the results of testing. UHW has no confirmed or suspected cases in intensive care. The Taoiseach is hopeful coronavirus restrictions can slowly start to be eased next Monday. The latest figures show there are now over 23,200 confirmed cases here, while 1,488 people have died. Stephanie Rowan reports.
We'll find out on Friday if phase 1 of the country's reopening can begin next Monday. If it gets the go-ahead, DIY shops will open and small groups of 4 can meet. Construction work will resume, as will golf and tennis. But while hopeful, Taoiseach Leo Varadkar says all this still depends on the figures.
If things continue to go in the right direction, they have been for the last couple of days, Cabinet on Friday will give the green light for things to change on Monday. So Monday, all things go to plan. It is an easing of the restrictions, but it's only a limited easing.
This limited easing and any further changes also depends on testing and turnaround times. The director of the National Virus Reference Laboratory admits there have been delays and says a lot of that's down to IT systems. Dr Cillian de Gascon is hoping it will soon take 3 days from someone reporting symptoms to getting their results. Over 44,000 COVID-19 tests have been carried out in the past week, with a positivity rate of 3.3%.
The owner of Waterford company Azuri Sports, John Malloy, has turned his factory over to making protective gear for health workers. He says he's expecting to receive official guidance on how to make a reusable mask for use by the general public very soon.
There's a committee working at the moment chaired by NSAI, and they're developing a face mask specification. It's a guideline for use by the general public. It'll be called Swift 19 Barrier Mask. People are actively at it all week. I believe that they hope to have it launched by the end of this week, early next week.
A lecturer in strategy at Waterford Institute of Technology's School of Business says he's worried that Waterford and the South East region will be left behind as the economy emerges from the pandemic. Ray Griffin says legacy economic issues, IDA neglect and overexposure to the retail and hospitality sectors mean Waterford will need massive state supports to weather the post-COVID lockdown world.
We're in national recession again, but, and this is the important issue for me, Waterford and the South East were in recession beforehand. We didn't recover in between the 2008 global financial crisis and this COVID recession. Our economy didn't heal. We're now getting a second national recession coming in on top of a lack of recovery.
Pub owners in County Waterford fear their pubs won't be viable because of social distancing. Radical changes from the Vintners Federation of Ireland include allowing no more than 6 people at any table, while bars have become dispense bars only with no sitting, standing or drinking at the bar allowed. David O'Brien from McCarthy's Bar in Tallow doesn't think it'll work for smaller pubs.
Fit in about 70, it's between 70 and 80 people, I presume. As a small business, you wouldn't have the capacity to let in a number of people and then have the social distancing at the same time. So that kind of hindsight, if you say opening in June, is only going to work for the big pubs you have in the cities. It won't work for small towns because you haven't got the size.
He says he's not sure how customers will adapt to the new rules.
Coziness is what you're talking about. Like, you want to be talking to someone, you can't be 2 metres apart the next minute. You can't start up a conversation at that level. Like, you go to talk to people, have a bit of crack and that thing, and that the social distancing will totally take that away from happening, obviously. Like, you'd hope the customers would adhere to what's being said, and most of them, I presume, would, but it's like anything, there's going to be lapses, and whether you have the room to do it is another thing.
A funeral director has praised nursing homes in Waterford in helping to ensure that Waterford has the lowest incidence of the coronavirus in the country. Michael Thompson from Thompson's Funeral Home told Damien Tiernan on Daysha today that all of the nursing homes acted very swiftly.
It's one of the reasons Waterford is doing so well is the nursing homes have been so proactive. Day one they set up a WhatsApp group, all the ones in Waterford. They were in touch with us, with the funeral directors, the HSE, and everything is so safe. Like ourselves here, we spent over €5,000 on PPE gear. Day one, we were lucky we got it before the shortages.
The Education Minister has been accused of mishandling the junior and leaving cert during the coronavirus crisis. The Dáil is hearing statements on education this afternoon as questions about the state exams persist. Labour TD Eoin O'Riordan says Minister Joe McHugh has provided a complete lack of transparency on the decisions made.
Hopefully today we get some answers, because we haven't really got too many answers heretofore. Every single issue that the Minister has had to deal with, from redeployment of SNAs to school meals, from the junior cert to the leaving cert, has been mishandled. So we really today are demanding that we get better clarity for students in Ireland, and obviously for parents and teachers too.
Education Minister Joe McHugh says the advice he's been given is that the state exams could not have gone ahead.
The State Examinations Commission advised me that the examinations would not be comparable to the Leaving Certificate in any other year, potentially involving the needs for students to wear masks and gloves, sit in exams, superintendents requiring PPE, and the prospect of the exam papers having to be redesigned to such an extent that they would have been unrecognisable when compared to what students had spent 2 years preparing for.
A lecturer at Waterford Institute of Technology says the third level sectors coped well with the challenges of COVID-19. All education facilities closed their doors on Friday, March 13th, with lectures carried out remotely. End-of-year exams are also being replaced with alternative assessments. Dr Cormac O'Rafferty is a lecturer in physics at WIT.
It's unfortunate, but it is like a giant social experiment worldwide where, as I say, many people in sort of the field of education research had said for years that it's actually better to give a student, here you go, a textbook or a video, a whole lot of things. Let them do that first. And then when they've, tried to understand it and they come to you with questions, that's actually a much more efficient way of learning something than simply to walk into a room and start telling them about something they've never heard of before.
He says there are elements of normal college life that his students don't miss.
From what I hear from my students, they're finding it very different, but not necessarily harder, and they don't miss being dragged from lecture to lab to tutorial. A common complaint among third-level students, especially science students, is that they don't have enough time to study. They're always pointing that out, and I think I remember that as a student myself, forever saying, when are we actually going to study, which is what a student should be doing.
The government has lost a vote seeking for the Gearan report into Garda misconduct allegations to be removed from the Dáil record. The report led to the resignation of the then Justice Minister Alan Shatter, who was subsequently vindicated by the O'Higgins Commission, which found he handled the whistleblower allegations properly. The government is seeking to have the Gearan report removed from the Oireachtas Library. However, opposition politicians voted down the motion today. They argued, as it also needs a vote of the suspended Seanad, there's no point in having a Dáil vote on it at the moment. Justice Minister Charlie Flanagan disagrees.
Very poor reflection. And the Business Committee needs to have a look at itself and its relationship with the parties opposite.
And Debenhams workers in Waterford are planning another round of protests this Friday. Mandate Trade Union says 11 demonstrations are planned outside stores nationwide, including Waterford City Square Shopping Centre. 90 jobs were lost at its Waterford store. Workers say Debenhams has failed to fund their agreed redundancy package. Protest will take place at 12 noon on Friday.
WLR Sport, Ireland's local station of the year.
Starting with soccer, where former Manchester United defender Gary Neville doesn't think it's a certainty the Premier League will return next month. The UK government will allow sports for broadcast to return after June 1st as coronavirus pandemic restrictions are eased in Britain. The Premier League is aiming for a June 12th return, which Neville feels is a little over-ambitious.
I think the Premier League was sort of hanging their hat maybe on some sort of what would be definitive type statements from government on Sunday and Monday and didn't quite get that. And at this moment in time, if you're a Premier League owner, I don't think any of them would be sticking their hands up saying, let's get back playing next week.
Bayern CEO expects 1 billion people around the world to tune in to watch the return of German football. The top two Bundesliga divisions will resume this weekend after pandemic restrictions were eased in Germany last week. The English FA have taken FIFA to court over Chelsea's transfer ban, and their case will be heard next month. The Court of Arbitration for Sport will consider the FA's complaint on June 26th over FIFA's disciplinary processes. Chelsea and the FA were punished last year for breaches relating to the international transfer and registration of players under 18. While in racing, Royal Ascot is set to proceed behind closed doors in the middle of next month. UK racing is also set to resume on June 1st, with the situation here at home far more uncertain. WLR asking you to stay at home. Our next bulletin is at 2.